The Saratoga City Council meeting is underwritten by the generous support of Pinnell's Restaurant, classic Italian-American food since 1922.
1922, Babe Ruth debuts with the Yankees. WGY signs on air. Exterminator wins the Saratoga Cup, and Pinnell's Restaurant opens its doors for the very first time. For 5 generations, Pinnell's has been preparing delicious Italian food, served in a comfortable, home-like setting where everyone is welcome. 90 years of authentic Italian recipes, 90 years of the freshest ingredients, and 90 years of the finest classic Italian dishes, all made daily by hand. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga dining tradition since 1922.
This program is underwritten by the generous support of Stored Tech, technology solutions for computers, networks, and phone. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
Firms deal only with prevention, the systems that block hackers and viruses. Stored Tech knows the root cause is actually good people doing bad things. So we offer a security training program which includes certifying all participants to show they understand the basics.
Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phones. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
Welcome everyone to the March 16 meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Please rise while Supervisor Frazier leads us in the pledge to the flag. And please excuse my voice this afternoon.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer? Here. Mr. Loeb? Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Ms. Hogan? Here. Mr. Dickinson?
Here.
Mr. Merlino?
Here.
Mr. Stroud?
Here.
Mr. Wild? Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. Sokol?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Here. Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairman Conover?
Here. You should all have received the minutes of our meeting of Feb 16. Chair will entertain a motion to approve. Ms. Bramer on the motion to approve. Mr. Driscoll on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll begin. Call Mr. Thomas and Mr. Merlino forward, please. We have a proclamation to present to students and faculty of Hadley Luzerne Junior Senior High School in recognition of their designation by the Anti-Defamation League as a no place for hate school.
Whereas students and the faculty that have Luzerne Junior Senior High School located in Lake Luzerne demonstrated a strong commitment to the Military Initiative, successfully completing the process to receive this designation, making it the first in Warren County to do so. And whereas this action represents a desire to demonstrate strength in the growing diversity of our county body and reinforce great fundamental protections that all persons are entitled to equal protection, opportunity, and enjoyment of civil rights. And whereas the members of the Board of Supervisors are proud of the actions taken by both the students and the school staff in an effort for the betterment of our society, now therefore be it resolved that the Warren County Board of Supervisors follows the deliberation to commemorate this achievement and congratulate the students and faculty of the Hadley Lutheran Junior Senior High School on their efforts. This does encourage public school districts in Warren County to follow this example. Date is March 16, 2018. Ronald F. Conover, Warren County Chairman, Warren County Board.
Could I just say, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone here. I just want to thank our kids. They're the ones behind this. They're the ones that carry it on. They're the ones doing the work. Appreciate all the advisors that work with them. My high school principal, Burgess of it, keeping it going with them. But it's all about you guys. You guys want to keep it going. Thank you very much.
We have a second proclamation. I'll forego reading it, dealing with National Crime Victims' Rights Week, but I would ask, with your privilege of the floor, to ask our District Attorney, Jason Carson, if you might step forward and say a few words.
Rather than read the proclamation, what I'd like to do is just indicate that we have coming up the first week of April, starting April 8th, is National Crime Victims Week, and it's going to start in the capital region on the 8th and carry on for 1 week. This is basically a program that recognizes victims of crimes and rights that they are entitled to as well. For us, in Warren County, we've been participating for almost as long as I can recall, but in a joint cooperation with Washington County for about 10 years. The whole program's been going on since 1981, so say that's roughly 37 years it's been happening. The supervisors should have all received invitations. We do have RSVPs on those, and so hope that some people can come join us this year. There are some special people being honored. Some of the things that you may have heard about in the news recently was victims of violent crime. We've had conversations with some of the victims and some of the people that are supporting them, and we think they're going to be there. It's a really, really nice event. And this year it will be in Washington County. Next year it's in Warren. They've been rotating for the last 10 years. So I encourage anyone to come. Great event. It's one of the things that I get to do in this job that's a little more uplifting than what's going on right now. But when I leave this room and go downstairs. So if anyone has any questions, that's enough.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jason. At this time, I'd like to declare a public hearing open on proposed local law number 2 of 2018, a local law amending local law number 5 of 16 in relation to the imposition of an additional mortgage recording tax in Warren County, to amend section 3 to provide that the local law shall remain in effect until December 1st, 2020, and requests clerk read the notice of public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Warren, New York is considering the adoption of proposed local law number 2 for the year 2018 entitled a local law amending local law number 5 of 2016 in relation to the imposition of additional mortgage recording tax in Warren County to amend section 3 to provide that the local law shall remain in effect until December 1, 2020. Notice is further given that pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors on February 16, 2018, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Supervisors on March 16, 2018 at 10 a.m. in the Supervisors' rooms at the Warren County Municipal Center, Route 9, Queensbury, New York, at which time and place all persons interested in the matter of such proposed local law number 2 for the year 2018 will be heard concerning the same. A copy of said local law is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the clerk of the Board of Supervisors at the above stated address and may be viewed on the Warren County website.
Is there anyone here wishing to address the board regarding this local law? Mr. Whitehead.
Travis Whitehead, Queensbury. I'd like to take a couple minutes here just to talk about this before you vote on it. If you could give it a little more thought, as I've given it some more thought. I'd spent a little time, researching the subject the past few days. And so what I would like to ask the question of is whether this should really be a tax or a fee. It is a tax, and the difference between a tax and a fee is that you are not allowed to take in more money than it takes you to administer that fee. In this case, you're taking in over $1.5 million a year on this mortgage tax, and it's probably administered by a fraction of a clerk. So it would be a larger fee than you could justify. However, it's not a fee. You're asking it to be a tax. Now, you don't have the right to make it a tax. Only the legislature can do that. And if you notice in this resolution, there are a bunch of blanks in there for when this eventually gets passed by the legislature, it'll make it legal. So the problem here is also with the legislature, and why would they go ahead and allow you to collect more money than it costs to administer this? Well, this is a problem statewide and has become a larger problem statewide after the tax caps were put in. And now all of a sudden people are looking for ways to get around those property tax caps. An additional tax, this is not a property tax, would be one such way to get around it. If you were to put in a fee, you wouldn't be able to collect that $1.5 million a year. It would be less. Many other counties, and some are in court right now, have been raising fees to the point where they exceed their costs, and those are being challenged. You see some of this happening locally as well, and it's just something to be aware of. Nearly every community goes ahead and offers water services. Part of that is a fee based on the gallons you use. Part of it usually is a property tax based on the infrastructure. Recently in my town, 3 years ago, they went ahead and shifted the costs between the infrastructure and the operations budgets. The proclamation was that you're not going to be paying any more money, just putting more money in one category and taking out of the other, which is true. However, it made a big difference on the tax cap. They took money out of stuff that was under the tax cap and immediately replaced it with additional income that, for whatever reason, to make it up to that 2% back. So while on the water, we are not paying any more money, we are now paying more money in taxes in general because there's a way of getting around the tax cap. Those are the kind of things that I notice. Those are the kind of things that annoy me. And I just would like to say that in this case, this is another one that, while it's perfectly legal, so long as you do get the permission of the legislature, this is something that you should be thinking about, I am thinking about, and the legislature should be thinking about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? There being no one else, I'll close the public hearing. Report of the chairman. a very busy month. On February 22nd, we hosted Intercounty right here in Warren County and went on a tour of our new court facilities. Wonderful facility. I think everyone's going to be extremely pleased with it when they get a chance to see it at completion. I know the courts, family court in particular, is elated about the new facilities and what it'll do for their programming. On February 23rd, 26th, and 27th, attended committee meetings, 28th personnel, 29th personnel in finance. On March 2nd, an EMS meeting to discuss the challenge we have going forward with emergency response in this county. On March 8th, a personnel meeting once again, and March 16th, it brings us to today. Overall, I'd like to compliment Mr. Garrity and the Personnel Committee. It's been a very busy couple of months here. They've really moved forward, and they're part of their good work is in front of you this afternoon. In addition, I'd like to just mention that it appears as if the cap on forest preserve land was excluded from both the Assembly version and the Senate version of the budget, and that's good news, because that normally would indicate that there would be no further consideration of that cap. And I just would like to thank Matt Simpson and the Adirondack Association of Parks and Villages for their lobbying efforts. They actually got in their vehicles and went down to Albany and really did a job explaining to our legislators, our state representatives, why this wasn't such a good idea. So Matt, thank you and your organization for our organization for that initiative. And I just would also like to mention that I just recently received correspondence that is it Assemblyman McDonald? Yeah. Assemblyman McDonald and Senator Marchione have introduced concurrent resolutions which would create I believe it's a 3-year planning study to look at the Hudson Black River Drainage District. And during that time, the legislation proposes that the state of New York would assume the cost, which is now shared by the counties, for the administration of that drainage district. And that's a big deal because we right now are in the $242,908 a year we are having to budget and to give them for the administration of fundamentally a stormwater and drainage district. So anything we may want to consider hosting some legislation of support in the future, and certainly I would recommend that all of you individually weigh in on this. Is very important not only for our county but for the other counties to contribute greatly to the cost of this drainage district. And with that, it concludes my report. Thank you. Reports by committees. Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Committee for Health, Human, and Social Services met on February the 23rd. As a result of that meeting, we have 4 resolutions, 116 through 119. 116 is authorizing an agreement with Legal Aid Society of Northeastern New York to provide legal services to elderly residents of Warren and Hamilton counties for the Office of the Aging. 117 is authorizing agreement with Parsons Child and Family Center, Northern Rivers Family Services, to operate a mental health assertive community treatment team program for adults in Warren and Washington County. 118 is authorizing agreements with various providers for mental health respite services for children and youth with serious emotional disturbance on an as-needed basis for the Office of Community Services. And 119 is a resolution that's calling on the Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services and the Governor of the State of New York to provide state funding to support the treatment and transition services to individuals with substance use disorders who are incarcerated in county jails. We'd appreciate your support on those resolutions, but I would also like to remind everyone that Pat, our Director of Public Health, is retiring at the end of the month, and we certainly do appreciate all her hard work and dedication that she's given to the county over these years, and she has really run a wonderful department, kept things moving right along. I'd also like to thank her for taking my committee on a tour this morning so that we had an idea of what's really involved, and the number of people that are involved and the activities that go on. So I want to thank her for that. And Supervisor McGowan, we assumed you must have gotten lost along the way.
Well, I have to say, I did go to a few more corners probably than but everybody. But I have to say, it was a wonderful tour and another jam-packed office. I have to say, here at the county, we do utilize every square inch we have. That's true. This is about the most openest space I think we have in the whole building. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Frazier. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Cornell Extension Service, we met February 26th, and we had an awesome turnout by the supervisors that are on that committee. And we enjoyed a presentation by Catherine Martini, who is the Master Garden Coordinator. And it was an awesome presentation of all the things that they're working on throughout the community and the resources that they provide to everybody. So it's a great committee to be involved in, and it's a great group of people that participate there. And also in our packets, we have a resolution, very few resolutions that we have that are involving the Cornell Cooperative. But Resolution 121 is a resolution to increase state support for Cornell Cooperative Extension County Associations in the state of New York. Their funding under Section 224 of the county law provided by the state has remained stagnant for 17 years at $4 million. Has not risen, has not increased at all. And this resolution is in support of raising that funding from $4 million to $8 million. So we would appreciate your support on that. You know, this organization is just irreplaceable in our counties. They provide a great service to our children and our families. So we appreciate your support for that. And thanks again to all the supervisors that showed up. On February 27th, Public Works met. We had a report from the railroad by Justin Gagno. He reported on the Barton Mines contract that they had secured. It's their first long-term freight contract that they've had in quite a while. It's going to start in the next few weeks and terminating August of 2019. We also discussed a proposal to look at hooking up the fairgrounds to the sewer line extension that we're providing for the county for Countryside Adult Home, and the cost is not to exceed $16,000. Further in the meeting, we talked about paving, and we discussed contracting 5 of the roads out, subletting them out, which would provide for our existing crews to do more maintenance and more repairs that really need to be done, and create some efficiencies within that department. And that's also one of the resolutions. The resolutions that we have quite a few. It's starting with 122, that's authorizing highway reclamation and restoration projects. 123 is authorizing easement to locate some Niagara Mohawk power poles on existing Frontier poles. Resolution 124 is dealing with Marchicelli program aid eligible cost for a federal aid project. 125 is an agreement with Hoyt Albert Associates to provide additional preliminary engineering and right-of-way incidental services for the Palisades Road Bridge over Brant Lake Inlet. 126 is awarding a bid and authorizing agreement with the lowest bidder for the electronics recycling contract that we are anticipating we need to have done quickly. 127 is authorizing that the funds for connecting the Warren County Fairgrounds property to the town of Warrensburg main sewer line. 128 is authorizing a licensing agreement with the most responsive proposer for the luxury camping, aka glamping, at the Warren County Fairgrounds property. And with that concludes my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Hogan.
No report.
Supervisor Dickinson.
I have no committee reports. I would like to bring everybody up to speed. on an issue that we've been looking at, plastic bag issue. I have continued on with Supervisor Bramer's efforts in that arena. I have talked to Senator Kruger's office. He sponsored a bill in front of the Senate. I've also gotten the governor's report, which has been widely available. I hope to put Kruger's proposed proposal for bags online, so all of you will have availability to it. It's quite involved. I had a long conversation with one of Senator Kruger's associates and explained to me all the ramifications of the things that are in it. So if any of you are interested in it and do read that and have any questions, give me a call. If I can remember what they told me, I'll pass it on to you. And I would hope to bring this up to Intercounty at our next meeting. And I'm in the process of doing that as well. And then this coming month, when we have our environmental concerns meeting, we'll discuss this in earnest and bring it to the full board. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also want to thank Pat Ara for the tour. This morning it was pretty interesting. I didn't realize it took up that much space in our building, in a certain part of it. But they do a great job. We're going to miss her, and I think that the department is still move forward. Tourism met on February 27th. It was a very feisty meeting. And I want to thank the chairman and Amanda for changing the date for us at tourism, because we got a 2.5 hour wait. And, a lot of the business people that come sit there for 2.5 hours, and it stirs them up even more, I think. So I want to thank them for that. The only thing, there's no resolution, but we did put out an RFP to replace an employee that left. But lately, as everybody's seen in the newspapers and talk and everything else, everybody likes numbers and figures. And to me, percentages and figures could be construed in many different ways. But one thing I want to mention, Time.com, it's a money magazine, named Lake George one of the top 20 places to visit in 2018. That's only 10 states in our country and 10 international. So being the top 10 of that was pretty good for our county. I hope it we did put it on our social media, and we've already got 1 million hits on it. So see how that goes. A full report will be given at our next tourism meeting. Also very proud, the tourism department summer TV campaign won an award from the American Advertising Federation for a top TV commercial on tourism. So we're pretty proud of that too. The only other thing I just want to point, because I have numbers and figures too, we just found out this week that in tourism, Airbnb announced that they did $2.8 million in Warren County in business. 2.8. If you want to break it down in numbers, that's 196,000 and 7% sales tax that we don't get, and 112,000 in occupancy tax that we don't get. So that's a lot of, I know we go back and forth about tourism is slipping and all the stuff that we hear constantly, but there's a lot of parts of tourism in our county that people don't count. This is one of them. And the other one, this is just for an FYI, one of the biggest growing parts of our county other than Airbnb is camping. And that should be keep growing for the next 10 years at least. And camp sites do not collect hot tax or sales tax. So those are two big objects that bring people to our county that we really don't account for in our sales tax and hot tax revenue. And the tourism department is continually meeting with Gina Metzer from the CDB. Everything seems to be really going well. We've got a lot of good ideas. They put out a couple of things that we really are proud of. Video that you got to look at, and We're gonna keep our monthly meetings with Gina, and we're gonna keep working together with CDC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Stroh.
Yes, thank you. Legislative, first of all, I want to thank Patricia Auer. I think she's a great person. She's done a great job. So I know what everyone else is saying just reinforces that. I wanted to say that as well because I felt strongly about that. Legislative and Rules met February 26, 2018, and there are two agenda items, resolutions before you that come out of that committee. The first is Resolution 120, and that is a resolution in opposition to taxable state-owned land conversion to payment in lieu of taxes, a pilot program. So this is a resolution that supports the assessment of taxable state-owned land and that it remain under control of local municipalities where such property is located. And we are opposed to New York State converting assessment of taxable state-owned land into payment in lieu of taxes program. And with your permission, I have Terry Ross, who is the Town of Queensbury assessor, as well as the former president of the New York State Association of Assessors, here to speak to this matter. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like her to do so.
Without objection. By all means.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. State-owned land. Now, Glens Falls is going to get a little tutorial because they don't have any state-owned taxable land. But there's over 3 million acres of forest preserve. And in 1886, the state legislature passed a resolution, actually it's a part of real property tax law, that says that all forest preserve should be assessed by a local assessor and taxed just like we have millions and millions of people that take advantage of that forest preserve. And what this year for the governor in the governor's budget, he has decided that it might be a good idea to take that assessment feature away from the assessor's office to freeze what they're paying in taxes now, and to then only be able to increase that each year by the amount you can increase your tax cap. Now again, for Glens Falls, they don't have any. Town of Queensbury has very little. But as I sit here, there's Stony Creek and Thurman and Johnsburg and Warrensburg and so many towns that in this county that have, in Bolton, yes, in Bolton, that have taxable state-owned land. This means that essentially the state's going to pay what they're paying now and not very much more in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years. And if in 1886 they decided that it should be taxed just like private property, why are they taking that feature away? I think it's really going to hamstring and really hurt and shift the burden of those taxes to private property owners. So my association has been very much involved with this. We're lobbying in Albany too, and we were very happy to hear, as Mr. Simpson reported, that the Senate version and the Assembly version of the budget, of this year's budget, has rejected it. But I'm here to just ask you to pass that resolution. Even though they've rejected it, doesn't mean that it's not coming back. And we've gathered resolutions from towns and school districts and counties throughout the state in opposition of this. And we just want to keep their feet to the fire and hope that you will pass this resolution. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions, Claudia?
Sure, thanks. Yes, I'm from Glens Falls, representing Glens Falls, and I am in support of 120 because I also feel strongly that we should, as a county, oppose the pilot program that was proposed by the governor. I would like to know, do you have a sense of the number of acres in Warren County that are forest preserved?
I'm sorry, I don't. I was thinking of that when I came up here, and I just pulled the numbers for the state, and I didn't pull for Warren County. But all the lands, all the islands in Lake George are considered taxable state-owned land. You know, I think that Stony Creek and Thurman maybe both have more state-owned, almost more state-owned land than they do privately owned properties. So it is a huge amount, but I'm sorry, I don't have that number.
Thanks.
Terry, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. And the next resolution that came out of Legislative and Rules Committee was Resolution 121. And that is a resolution to increase state support for Cornell Cooperative Extension. They are community partners in helping to implement state initiatives, including maximizing agricultural and local food systems, strengthening the economy, promoting healthier eating habits and access to good nutrition, fighting poverty, particularly in rural areas, protecting water quality and stewardship of New York's natural resources, building opportunity through STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math-based youth education and leadership skills in 4-H, promoting renewable energy options while protecting farmland resources and protecting and partnering where appropriate in Taste New York initiatives to promote tourism and local food and farm businesses and much more. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Dr. James Seeley to speak to this particular resolution, if he can do so with your permission.
Without objection. Fine.
I'd like to thank Supervisor Simpson and Supervisor Stroud for outlining it. But first I'd like to thank Warren County for the support of Cornell Cooperative Extension over the years. We could not do it without you. As I said, I spoke to the Legislative and Rules Committee about 224 funding. 224 enables government entities to provide support for Cornell Cooperative Extension. This funding goes directly to each county for their programs. The state allocation hasn't increased in over 17 years. And if anything, an increase in state allocation would cause us to be less reliable on our county support. So we met with our state legislators at the beginning of the month. They are in support. They're going to sign letters of support for this resolution. So we would appreciate your support in that.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes my committee report, but I just have one comment about Resolution 126. I want to thank Julie Butler for going out to rebid for e-waste, and we're going to end up in a much better situation, so I appreciate her cooperation. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Stroud. Supervisor Beatty.
Yes, thank you. Just an update on shared services. Julie did do a great job on putting out that new bid for e-waste. That was directly from hearing from supervisors. So that's a county employee reacting in a very, very positive way to what each of your towns were facing and getting on it within 30 days. That was admirable. I also had a meeting with Julie and with Supervisor Bramer. If that's for me, I can't take it right now. Thank you. No, I won't bring home the bread.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. It reminded me of Mr. Montesi, but we won't go there.
My wife needs me, so. She's checking up on me, so I won't pass out at this meeting.
No, we hope you don't. But we did have a short meeting with Ms. Butler, and it was about an hour and a half. So we. At our next committee meeting, we'll discuss more about animal control services and where the shared services falls on that. I'd like to have the committee weigh in on that at our next meeting because there's a lot more to that than what meets the eye, and other counties don't do it, and for a number of reasons. But I'll be glad to go into what Claudia and I learned a couple weeks ago. And I'm also in support just of the 126. You know, I get a little disappointed with the state and all the unfunded mandates. And now here they're trying to hamstring all the state-owned land on being able to increase the taxes. I find it almost hypocritical. They want to increase taxes and fees everywhere they can, and then here in Warren County in upstate New York, they kind of handcuff you towns. So I'm very disappointed and disturbed by that. Thank goodness our Assembly and Senate had some common sense left and will not put it in the budget. But I support that wholeheartedly, and Mr. Strauss and Ms. Ross for outlining it even clearer, as well as Mr. Simpson. Finally, I'd like to commend Walter Young for coming to a meeting last week of finance, or actually about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I will not be in support though of a certain resolution today because I think we have a lot more questions than answers. But he did make that meeting, and I think after the next meeting that he comes to, which will be an EDC meeting chaired by Supervisor McDevitt, I believe we'll have our questions answered. But at this time, I've got about 20 questions. I got no answers. So anyway, that concludes my committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Beatty. Supervisor McGowan.
No committee report.
Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance met March 1st, and before you are resolutions 101, 102, and 132 through 144. It was quite a lengthy meeting, just shy of an hour and a half. But out of that shy hour and a half, we had 2 of the resolutions that were discussed for the most part of that time. And Supervisor Beatty kind of gave me a little segue for that one. Last month we had resolution 93, which was the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board resolution to authorize $7,000 in payment for their planning board. This came with discussion and questions from the committee. Mr. Young did do a nice presentation that we probably have never heard, but we also didn't realize that there was a resolution from 1977 that established Warren County as the premier stakeholder, if you will. So a lot of questions were asked and a lot were answered. I felt comfortable. The vote was unanimous to bring this resolution forward to the board, but I just realized as of this morning that there were some concerns. So to me, I would like to move forward with this resolution. Walter did say he was going to appear before Chairman McDevitt's Committee of Economic Development, and he would discuss any issues that came before the board. From what I understand, there are meeting minutes that he had asked for that were not given, but I just feel that is an issue, but I feel that moving forward, those will come. So that is resolution 133, and I'm looking for your support on that one. And 138, we finally have an agreement with Jack Gillette versus Warren County. So the attorneys did a great job working on that, and we finally came to a settlement. So that is resolution 138. And I too would like to echo what Supervisor Fraser had said. Pat Auer has been one of the premier department heads. I have obviously dealt with her since I've been on the board, and going through the budget process, we've asked for her to cut staff overtime, and guess what? She does it the very next week. So even down to the way she organizes her meetings. She gives a request and then a rationale, and she's just one of the top dogs out there, and we're going to miss her dearly. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Sokol. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. I think, as everyone knows, the sales tax through the end of February continues to be up, which is 1.3%, which is a great thing. Also, Resolution 137 is about $55,000 that's being transferred from the county road surplus not the general fund surplus, as I had recommended at the finance and the DPW meeting. On the evening of March 5th and March 6th, I was in Albany meeting with our legislators on behalf of the soil and water conservation districts across the state. Had meetings with 9 legislators that day. Basically, we were thanking them for their support in the EPF, the districts. And we were also recommending 2 bills that are in the Senate and the Assembly on behalf of districts. One is a technical bill for Part C funding, and the second one is to allow districts to apply for local waterfront revitalization grants on behalf of the municipalities. And last Friday, I sat in on a meeting with our HR department, Blue Shield and Blue Cross, or Blue Shield, Yeager and Flynn, about the results of our health insurance from last part of 2016 through I think November of 2017. There was some interesting takeaways and probably a few things that we can do to try to keep our healthcare costs under control. That's my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Thomas. And Frank, if you're interested in resolutions to support, I think soil and water conservation districts being able to apply for LWRP on behalf of multiple municipalities, if not the county as a whole, is a very positive step in that direction. So anything that I can do to assist you in that regard, please let me know.
Yeah, it just it eases the process. You know, it flows better if soil and water can apply for the grants directly.
I would agree. Supervisor Hyde.
Thank you, no report.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee met on February 27th. Heard requests from 6 departments: assigned counsel, fire prevention, building code enforcement, Warren County Sheriff's Department, Office of Emergency Services, Public Defender, and District Attorney. The committee has forwarded 11 resolutions to the board for their consideration. Those are resolutions 105 through 115. I request that resolution 105 be withdrawn at this time and be taken back to committee for correction of the monetary amount. I'd like to make that motion.
We have a motion to withdraw 105, second by Mr. Simpson. Discussion. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the withdrawal signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is withdrawn.
Thank you. The remaining 8 resolutions involve authorization of contracts, applications for grants, and authorization of out-of-state travel. One of those involves construction of a radio communication facility on a new tower for the Sheriff's Department, and one of the remaining resolutions approves updates to the Warren County Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. I recommend approval of all resolutions.
Thank you. Supervisor Diamond.
Chairman, thank you very much. Facilities met in February. A couple of topics that were discussed at that meeting. One was building and grounds relative to the building that the county owns, on Warren Street. We're currently operating on a monthly basis with the recycling company down there. It hasn't been quite determined by the committee yet whether we want to renegotiate or extend that contract. We're looking to have that discussion at the next meeting. I'm hoping that everybody on the committee has had an opportunity to read that contract, and there's some issues that I'd like to talk to the county attorney directly in regards to that facility prior to that meeting. Number 2, we met also during the facilities meeting. We talked about the Floyd Bennell Memorial Airport's fixed-based operator respondee to the RFQ that was sent out. We did get 2 respondees, one for a complete fixed-based operator, the other one for a partial responsibilities to the airport. What we've done is, and I want to be very clear that the RFP or the RFQ also included a draft RFP was sent out. Speaking with the purchasing agent, we have sent a additional RFP out with only minor changes were relative to prevailing wage. The Department of Labor has determined, the questions was raised during the RFP process, what may apply, what may not apply to prevailing wage. The Department of Labor has determined that they will take that, answer those questions on a case-by-case basis. Those are the only real changes to the RFP. We expect to have this back sometime in April. We have a timeline to the end of 2017 to negotiate, and if the county determines that they want to be a fixed-based operator, hire someone to do that, that's certainly an option out there. During our discussions at the meeting, I approached two supervisors that were on the facility. I asked them to serve in a role as lead negotiators. They have accepted that. Mr. Sokol, Mr. Beatty, and Mr. McDivitt have taken on that responsibility. They will be the lead negotiators with the selected responding to the RFP, and hopefully we'll be able to come to some sort of determination or conclusion before the expiration of the existing contract. A couple of reasons why they were selected as the chairperson. I felt that they brought significant experience to the board. Not only that, but many of you here also serve in roles in your communities. I didn't want to ask you to take on any additional responsibilities. I know you're busy in your towns and villages. Traveling would be an issue, so I chose those three individuals because of their experience, their locality, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to come to some sort of better agreement if the committee and the full board does accept the proposals that are going to be ongoing in the upcoming year. On your packets today, there are two resolutions. 103, which is relative to a grant application for engineering and design not to exceed $135,000, which the local match would be about $6,700 to do some apron improvements at the airport. And the other resolution, 104, is an amendment to a resolution that was adopted in year 2017, which I didn't take place on. So I leave that up to the board to make any changes or make a decision. So I'm looking forward to your support on those two resolutions today. But that concludes my report from the facilities. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Diamond. Just getting used to that now. I keep wanting to call you mayor, but maybe I will on occasion. Yeah, I understand that. Supervisor McDivitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe to piggyback just a little bit on Supervisor Merlino's comments relative to tourism and the amount of dollars that are generated for it. We finally, in today's Post-Star, see where work has begun on the new visiting center between exit 17 and 18. So we have a 9,000 square foot facility, basically modern, Adirondack themed, all of the various components necessary to give tourists that are entering our geography, to give them that first positive blush in terms of who we are, our values, and the beauty of our North Country. So this hopefully will be done by fall, and I think will be an entree to what's going on in terms of the positive things within our area. And just a second component, I've taken the liberty to invite a guest to one of our future meetings, okay? And she was actually on TV last night, okay? She was at the Loyola game, and Loyola beat, they beat Miami, I think, last night, okay? So this is Sister Jean Dolores Schmidt, okay? She is has been the teen chaplain for Loyola for the last 20 years. She actually was sitting in a wheelchair And after the game, she gave a big sigh of relief and said, "Thank God." Okay, so I reached out to her, and there are a couple of supervisors in the body that need significant prayer. So I thought that she has decided to come. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairman. No committee report.
Supervisor Driscoll.
No report. Thank you.
No report. Report by the county administrator.
Well, I'll start with the personnel report. We have resolutions 129, 130, 131 dealing some with amending payroll organization and salary compensation. We have one that deals with the background checks with Allied Worldwide Investigation Group. And then resolutions 145, 46, 47, and 48 deal with personnel, hiring new personnel. As far as administrator's report, I too would like to recognize Pat Auer in her retirement. And then also Tammy Green has a milestone of 20 years working for the county at DSS. The other part of my report, I attended the inter-county meeting here held in Warren County, which we did do a tour of the court. And also I was at the EMS task force meeting, which I thought went very well for our first meeting, and hopefully we can move that along so we have something by the midsummer. Other than that, we've had a lot of extra personnel meetings where we did interviews, and I want to thank all the committee members, and I want to thank the other supervisors who took the time out of their schedule to attend those interviews. And that's my report.
Thank you. Report of the county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to report to the board that since the settlement agreement with Gillette was brought before the Finance Committee, there have been further discussions that I do think it's important I bring to the board's attention. Therefore, before you vote on that resolution, I would just request that someone request an executive session so we can talk about those conversations.
We have a motion to go into executive session by Mr. Simpson, second by Mr. Dickinson. Discussion. Mr. Zoll.
Is that something we want to do right now, or is it something that we're going to do before we vote?
Well, we have to do it before we vote. I don't think this shouldn't take too long. No, we'll try to govern the clock on this. Anyway, we have a motion for executive session. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. We're going into executive session. Reading of communications.
Report of criminal and family work codes for January 2018 for the Warren County Probation Department. Warren County Department of Weights and Measures monthly report for February 2018. Warren County Commissioner of Jurors annual report for 2017. Minutes from the Warren and Washington County CDC and IDA from their February 27, 2017 annual meetings, February 16, 2018 regular meeting, and February 15, 2018 executive meeting. Copy of letter written by Francis O'Keefe to the Post-Star regarding the Cedars Mill site. Letter from Counties of Warren, Washington, IDA announcing resignation of John Weber from the IDA and CDC. Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. January payment in the amount of $3,088. Town of Stony Creek Resolution Number 42 of 18, designating Supervisor Thomas as the town's representative to the Warren County Youth Bureau. Essex County Board of Resolution Numbers 21, in support of the implementation of Governor Cuomo's Broadband Initiative. 36, opposing Governor Cuomo's proposal contained in the 2018 budget review bill to change the law regarding taxation of state forest preserved land. 37, resolution opposing Governor Cuomo's proposal contained in the 2018 budget review bill to amend laws regarding the current 480 and 488 forest exemption. And from the United States Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, we received docket number P2385, order approving historic properties management plan issued March 6, 2018.
Thank you. Reading of resolutions.
Proposed resolution numbers 101 through 144 were mailed. Proposed resolution numbers 127, 129, 137, and 139 were amended after mailing. The revised resolutions were emailed to the board earlier in the week and posted to the county website. A motion is needed to approve the amendments to resolution numbers 127, 129, 137, and 139 as presented.
Moved by Mr. Dickinson, second by Mr. Sokol. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Amended.
Proposed resolution number 145 through 149 were developed after mailing. Copies were emailed to the board earlier in the week and posted to the county website. A motion is needed to bring resolutions 145 through 149 to the floor, as well as the proposed floor resolution that Mary set up.
A motion, Mr. Dickinson. Do I have a second? Mr. Thomas, discussion. Ms. Bramer.
All of those were revised, 145 through 149?
They were not revised. Those were they were not mailed.
Any other discussion? Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of bringing them forward signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The proposed floor resolution will now be resolution number 150.
Now I'll open this up to the public. Anybody here wishing to address the board regarding any resolutions? Mr. Whitehead.
Travis Whitehead, Queensberry. In regards to resolution 138, the Gillette payment, how much is that?
Mary.
I can't comment on that, it's confidentiality clause.
Well, you know, I do have a right to know. I believe I have filed a FOIL request, as you're aware. The public will pay this bill. You can't keep that from us. I mean, eventually it'll come out. So why wouldn't we know now, before the decision is being made, what the cost is going to be? And also, why wouldn't we use this as a learning experience? I mean, everybody makes mistakes. In this case, a mistake was probably made that this was dragged out for years. I don't know how much of this is going to even be picked up by insurance, because if I were the insurance company, I would have told you long ago to settle, and I'm going to cap it at this point if you don't pay attention to me. So how much is being paid by us? Why would you use taxpayer money to go after a taxpayer? You know, you have deeper pockets, obviously, than any individual taxpayer, and that's wrong. So my FOIL request stands, and that eventually will probably get answered. But it'll again be delayed to the point where when I get that information, it's not going to help to draw a conclusion here. It's not going to help to answer the question, should you accept this or shouldn't you accept this? Should you do something to make sure this doesn't happen in the future? It's going to be delayed. I have already filed 2 lawsuits in the past for delayed information. I have an appeal presently on one of them. I mean, the public does have a right to know. It is our money. So it's something as simple as how much we should know. I don't know how you can say otherwise. Resolution 150, the same thing. Settlement with who and for how much? I mean, this thing gets dumped onto the schedule this morning, and we have no idea who what employee you might be talking about the settlement with, how much that might be, etc. Same questions. Resolution 133, the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board issue will not be settled today, whether or not you vote for the $7,000. But I will be very interested in seeing who does vote for that, because you will be giving up your fiduciary responsibilities to find out whether or not this organization that you want to give $7,000 to has been following the rules that they need to follow. And it is this organization here that has been tasked with determining whether they are monitoring their performance, and that obviously hasn't been done. You know, the only thing that we've really learned in the last couple months when we've been asking the questions is that we really don't know the answers to an awful lot of questions. I can't tell you in the end whether or not you're going to find out that there's some real problems here, but you can't tell me that there aren't any real problems either. And for you to go ahead and give $7,000 to an organization that you know is administering millions of dollars, I mean, that $7,000 can't be a huge problem for an organization that's administering millions of dollars. If it is, maybe you even got a bigger problem. So why you would be rushing to make that decision before you get some of the answers, I have no idea. And if you think this is going to end at the end of this vote, you don't know me very well. So, Resolution 149, trying to make up a retroactive appointment to the same planning board, appointing somebody to a position that expired already. Why? I mean, someone made a mistake. It doesn't seem like it's a big mistake. It was missed. Admit you made a mistake and move on. I mean, is it that tough? You have to try to put a resolution in that says Mr. Simpson was the guy last year. Fine, I accept that, but a resolution, an ex post facto resolution, I mean, look at your Constitution. I mean, these things aren't even allowed. And then finally, personnel decisions in resolutions 146 to 148 were made in committee. I mean, nobody can really stand here and say that what your vote today is going to change whether a Mr. Ryan or not is going to be appointed the next county administrator. Certainly that news has been in the paper. His boss knows about it. Everybody knows about it. That decision was made in committee. What bothers me there is that I live in Queensbury. I have 5 representatives. Each one carries 8.5% weighted vote. In that committee, there's only 1 person out of 11 from the town of Queensbury. I'm very much underrepresented. The chairman of that committee represents less than 2% of the people. I have 5 people that have 8.5% of the county people. The chairman has 2%, represents 2%. There's a problem here in the way that these decisions are being made. And I'll end it there. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Resolutions. Anyone wishing to call for a roll call? Roll call votes, Ms. Bramer.
130, 133, 145. That's a voice vote on 146 through 148 or a roll call. Sure, thank you.
130, 132, 165, 146 through.
No. 130, 133, 145, and then 146 through 148 are the appointments.
Any other calls for roll call? Mr. Simpson.
149, please.
Roll call on 149 as well. Any other roll calls?
133.
All right. Discussion on resolutions, Mr. Dickinson.
The Gillette resolution, I waited a long time to say I told you so. I argue adamantly on Mr. Gillette's side, not because he is a constituent or a friend, but because he was in the right, and for no other reason. Unfortunately, I told you so because of 3 members of this board that are no longer here. So it's been a long time coming. The county has, in my opinion, wronged Mr. Gillette, and it's taken us this long to realize that he was right to start with, and I fully support the resolution to end this, and end it now. The Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board.
Just a moment. We'll get to that. I'll come right back to you. Further discussion on 138. Ms. Bramer.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have a question if, for our county attorney, if there is insurance on that particular claim, or is that a county-only situation? There's no insurance on that. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on 138?
Again, just for the public record, let me concur with that. Mr. Gillette is clearly, Dennis represents Mr. Gillette. Gone on too long, time to settle, time to move on, and I think he got a little too stubborn, a little too angry, and lost the common sense necessary to settle this thing. So, like I said, move on.
Any other discussion on 138? There being none, I will close discussion on 138. Mr. Dickinson.
The other resolution is the Lake George Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board. It's an organization that's been around 50 years. And again, as I said in committee, it's an organization that has been extremely active in Warren County, has brought Warren County millions and millions of dollars in grants and programs. There are a number of coordinated efforts with other groups like the Lake George Association, the Fund for Lake George, the town, the Soil and Water Conservation. They're just a very helpful group. They've got a really, really great staff there. As I said before, the town of Lake George rents them space in our historic courthouse at a very reasonable fee. I deal with them all year long on a regular basis. I think this is just a stall tactic. He's brought them in and made a presentation to the committee. They readily agreed to come on a monthly basis and report what they were doing. I think it's time to move on this and move ahead. And then lastly, I'd just like to point out that the new welcoming center on the Northway, which just started construction, has in its plans boat inspection stations. Now, in my term here, we went from no boat inspection program to the only boat inspection program east of the Mississippi. It seems kind of odd to me that we could have a facility like this with a boat inspection station there without mentioning it. It's a big asset. That's a major entrance to the Adirondack Park. So we have an opportunity to catch them as they come in. And I'm sure we'll find once they open that up that inspection station will be one hot item. Thank you.
Further discussion on 133.
Thanks for those comments, Mr. Dickinson. I always run by the premise that I'm not going to vote on something that I don't know what the heck I'm voting on, or I haven't had answers supplied. Mr. Young was gracious enough to come to our committee meeting a few weeks ago. We asked him to send in the minutes of the meetings. Doesn't seem like a big deal. Never responded. So now we've had to foil them. Citizens foiled them for that information. When you don't cooperate, it gives me a bad gut feel. Now, he's probably doing phenomenal things, and I hope the heck he is. But we have a ton of questions that were not answered at that. In fact, he was insulted when I just asked him how many board meetings there were in 2016. He said, put it in writing. Send me a letter. Put it in writing. We find out that this board oversees that commission, that board. I don't think half this board even knew that. I bet even three quarters didn't know that until 2 months ago. We'd even know that they're county employees. I asked the treasurer three times, and he said, I don't know. We had to go through heck and back to figure out that they are county employees. So when simple questions are not answered or can't be answered, I have a problem. I'm glad he's going to come to the EDC meeting. He hasn't responded back. He's been offered. He hasn't said he's coming. No one's heard from him. But
Supervisor Bramer and
Supervisor Bramer and myself both extended an offer to come to the EDC. I'd like to see the loan portfolio.
One that has a 35%
One that has a 35% default ratio.
Now, I don't know about
Now,
you people.
I don't know
I'm not
about
a
you
banker,
people, I'm not a
but I
banker.
think if you got a 35%
But I think if you got a 35% default ratio, you're in deep trouble.
You're handing out loans.
You're handing out loans
that are very suspect.
that are very suspect.
I don't know. Maybe,
I don't know.
Maybe
Maybe
you guys are bankers.
you guys are bankers and you're sharper than that.
All
But
I want to know
all
is,
I want to know
just
is,
come, be
just
open,
come, be open, be
transparent.
transparent.
Something that we have a problem
Something that we have a problem with up here at the county.
Be transparent.
Be transparent.
Come and answer the questions.
Come and answer the questions openly, willingly.
You know, good
And,
things can
you know,
happen.
good things can happen when transparency
But with the
occurs.
lack of
But with the lack of transparency, bad things
And so,
occur.
you know,
And
I
so,
look forward to
you know,
that
I
meeting.
look forward to that
Again,
meeting.
he hasn't replied
Again,
back.
he hasn't
He's
replied back. He's
Mr.
coming.
Dickinson seems to
Mr.
think he
Dickinson
has,
seems
but
to
he
think he has, but he
hasn't.
hasn't. And so,
I hope he does.
I
But
hope
I
he
can't
does.
vote
But I
yes on
can't vote
something
yes on something.
We don't even know what we're
We don't
voting
even know
on
what we're
and what
voting
he
on
actually
and what
does
he
or doesn't
actually
do.
does or
We haven't
doesn't
seen
do.
minutes.
We haven't seen minutes.
By law, he's supposed to
By
supply
law,
the
he's
minutes
supposed to
the
supply
board
the minutes to the
We had
board
one
members.
board member
We
think
had
he
one
was
board
on the
member
board
think
who
he was
wasn't.
on
We
the
had
board
another
who
board
wasn't.
member
We had another
who's
board
never been
member
to a meeting
who's
in
never
2
been to a
years.
meeting in 2 years, Mr.
Are
Stroud.
we kidding
I mean,
ourselves
are we
here that
kidding
know what
ourselves
we're
here that
doing?
we know what we're doing?
So I'm gonna vote
So
no, and I
I'm
hope
gonna
some of
vote
you
no,
else
and I
vote
hope
no.
some of you else vote no.
If he answers the question,
If he answers the questions,
next month I'd be glad
next
to
month
vote
I'd be
yes.
glad to vote yes.
But I've got a lot of questions.
But I've got a lot of
I'm not
questions,
gonna
and I'm not gonna put
my
hang
vote out on
my
something
vote
that we
out
don't
on
know.
something that we don't know about. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing?
Anyone else wishing to discuss or have comments on 133?
Yes, I have to agree with, thank you, Mr. Chairman, with Supervisor Beatty here. And being new to this, and coming on, it was totally confusing to me that everybody was totally confused, that not too many people. So I would like to, hold back on this until the questions are, can be answered, and I learn a little bit more of what's going on, where I feel more comfortable on doing that. It is, not that it's a substantial amount of money, but at the rate that our budgeting is going in the future, as they look out over the next 5 years, every little penny counts. So,
Are you making a motion to table 133?
I would like to table until questions are answered.
Is there a second? Discussion ends. Is there a second, Mr. Beatty, on the motion to table? Let's roll call that.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
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 Yes.
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 No.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. No.
No.
There are 381 votes in favor of tabling and 504 against.
504, is that?
504, is that?
504 against, 381 in favor, 115 absent, and 501 in favor.
Mr. Chairman?
Question,
I don't know the answer to this. Can members of that board actually vote on that resolution, or tabling that resolution? You're a member of the board for 2000 and...
No, you're not.
No, you're not 2018, you're 2017. But Mr. Dickinson is now vanished. He's a member of the board. Mr. Strauss is a member of the board. And
Simpson thinks he's a member.
Simpson thinks he's a member, but he's not. But we're gonna vote on that today. By law, can they even vote on that, seeing that they're on the board?
You're asking for a point of order?
Yes.
I'll ask for when there are appointees to those boards, they're allowed to vote on this resolution.
We're gonna have to check
on that.
So pending that, then I would recommend that we table this resolution, pending that we don't know whether you can actually vote on this or not.
Well, I think if they weren't, are not able to vote on this resolution, then the resolution, I believe, would fail as a matter of course.
Just give me a
give you. If they couldn't vote, then the motion would fail.
The motion to table.
The motion to table. $381, yes, there were 504. So, it still would fail because you still wouldn't get the 501 even with their recusal. The motion to table would fail.
Okay, but then when we vote on the motion, then, so obviously we'll be voting on the motion. I want to know whether Dickinson, Stroud, and I don't know what Simpson's status is, but anyway, two of them we know are on the board. Are they allowed to vote? Please, Mr. Dickinson, I'm talking. Are they allowed to vote on that resolution? Because that's important to know. So, pending, you don't know. How can we vote on a resolution if we don't know the board members or have the authority to vote on it?
I get what you're saying, but I would also say that should there be an issue with this that we identify in the next day or two, we certainly would have to go back and revisit this. There'd be no transmittal of $7,000 as a process in and of itself. So the resolution that's in front of us is to give them the $7,000. And should there be an issue, we feel we for whatever reason, technically or otherwise, we don't have a quorum, then I mean, if 5-1 weighted votes, then we certainly are not going to distribute the funding. So I would say that as a practical matter, while I understand your point, my ruling would be that they can vote on the existing motion, but should there be identified a legal reason that they cannot, we certainly are not going to transmit the $7,000 and we will revisit it at that time. But what's in front of us is a contract to get them $7,000. So you have the assurance that that's only, if there should be an issue, that's not going to happen.
And that's my ruling.
And that's my ruling.
Discussion on
133.
Yes, thank you. Many of us are appointed other boards, extension, so water conservation services, various boards that also handle money that this whole board appropriates for. So I would think that it would be unusual that board supervisors is not able to vote on these various issues.
Well, that's a very good point.
Well, that's a very good point, and I was thinking that as well, that should there be an issue in this regard, it's going to apply to more than just Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board. But we'll look into it, and if there's an issue, we will certainly revisit it. Of course, we're not going to just ignore it.
Further questions or
comments on 133? We're still on 133. Ms. Kramer.
133, thanks. When Mr. Young came to the committee, I was pleased that he was there and giving us the presentation. He did give us a sort of, not a super strong indication that he was going to come to our next meeting, and I know that Supervisor McDevitt and Ms. Allen have reached out to him, and he has not responded, as far as I know. So that's my concern. It's not that it's $7,000, and they are a good organization. My concern is that we've asked him to come and provide us documents, and he has not been willing to, immediately respond to that and give us the information. He has staff that can be providing that to us. It's been 2 weeks. And for an organization that is handling billions of dollars, that information should be readily available and transmitted to us. And I haven't seen it yet, so I'm going to vote no today on 133.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just think that we should clarify what happened with my appointment, because there's a lot of back and forth, I'm either on or I'm off, whichever way you want to benefit your argument. But I was actually asked by the chairman of the board, I think it was at a meeting, to take Evelyn, Supervisor Wood's position after she resigned. And I signed my oath card. I attended those meetings. The resolution was never amended in midterm after the appointments were done at the beginning of the year. So, as far as I'm concerned, I felt like I was on the board. I participated. I worked on behalf of the taxpayers. If the board doesn't want me on the board, that's fine. I'm not going to vote on it. But Just wanted to clarify what happened because I do know that I was on that board.
Thank you. Further discussion on 133. Mr. Straugh, I'm sorry for the delay, Mr. Straugh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to clarify,
You know,
everybody knows
my strong sense of duty to doing what's right and wrong.
when somebody makes a
When somebody makes a claim that I've never attended a board meeting and takes it out of context, that's an incorrect statement.
Putting in context,
The Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board was never notified that I was on the board.
and I never got
confirmation from them that I was on the board.
So I was never
So I was never invited to a board meeting, so how am I supposed to attend board meetings I was never invited to? Just to clarify.
We've taken steps to
remedy that going forward.
in terms of our
appointments, to make sure they're very clear over there. Any other discussion on 133? Mr. Garrity?
I just want to chime in with what Supervisor Light said. You know, Supervisor Simpson and myself, we sit on the APA local government board. We attend all the meetings that we can. You know, that when something comes up in APA local government, we're supposed to recuse ourselves. You know, that's a huge change. You know, good point, and not brought up. But that would make a lot of difference whether any of us are appointed to any of these boards and whether we serve any of these boards in the future. If we're going to give up our vote here in this case. So, I mean, there's not just that, there's representation, they have these conservation boards that people sit on. We're on the AATV, even though we don't directly have a lot of AATV issues, several of us serve on the AATV. And the other thing I'll say about Lake George Regional Planning, when I was chairman, I was appointed on the board. I didn't attend the meetings, but I always got the minutes, I always got the audits. I found the old audits back in 2014. They always would keep us up to speed on what's going on. So, you know, is it an issue for me? No, it's not an issue for me. But I can understand everybody else's view, and I take it. The reason for the resolution, if I could just talk the resolution point, Mr. Simpson, I felt it was better, and I asked the clerk, let's clean this up. In 2017, when this would resign from the board, Matt was appointed. The resolution never got followed up the next month as an amendment to the resolution. That's why I asked her. And if anybody wants to take issue with it being on the agenda, it's my fault. I asked her to put it on the agenda because it was basically a paperwork work sample. Mr. Simpson signed his oath of office and has just like
any other discussion on
Any other discussion on 133? Then I'll close discussion on 133. Discussion on other resolutions. Ms. Bramer.
I have a few, but one is the question on 116.
116.
And I apologize for not bringing this up sooner. I believe in committee, we also passed a resolution regarding payment to the previous provider of those legal services, and I don't see a resolution in here about that. This relates to the legal services in the Office of Aging.
There was discussion, as I remember it, there was discussion regarding continuity with the existing service provider relative to cases that they were presently handling. I remember that discussion. I'm just right now we're trying to determine exactly what form that took coming out of that committee.
There's already authority to pay him, so we don't need any resolution.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion on any other resolution? Mr. McGowan.
Yes, on resolution 129. You know, sometimes in the middle of the night I just wake up. There's so much that goes on in all these committees and that, and a lot of reviewing, and I keep having these nightmares over our future budget. So I'm trying to be conservative now, and one of them I want to bring up is we are hiring a county attorney, the first assistant county attorney. I believe, she's already on. you know, and I kind of have a feeling, a funny feeling, we're kind of jumping the gun on the intern coming up. You know, it's like I said, $48,000 is a lot of money, you know, for a temp intern, for one. And I'm wondering if that's something that we might be able to hold off on, to see if it's needed, just because we've had, you know, so many people in the past. Is it, you know, that's something that we still need?
I'll let the county attorney respond to that if she might.
It's not an extra position. The person coming into the second slot will fill that slot first with transition into the second assistant county attorney spot. Sorry. It's not an extra position. The person coming in as the second assistant county attorney will fill that position first and then transition into the second assistant spot.
Okay, so why, so we lost 2 assistants?
When I was appointed county attorney, my spot was vacant and the second assistant resigned at that time. So there were 2 open spots.
The answer is yes.
So we still, you know, like I said, this is gonna be being filled, in August. I mean, that's still quite a few months away. Is it, you know, like I said, we always seem to have a pattern. Well, we're gonna follow this and we're gonna follow that, but times change and stuff like that. And you know, and I'm not trying, I'm just trying to get a grasp on it. And sometimes we jump the gun on a few things where, you know, hey, if, you know, maybe we don't. Maybe we can, you know, the intern, instead of that much, you could get, you know, I don't know, say, you know, a cheaper intern that just comes in for the summer. I don't know. I just seem like we're jumping the gun there, and I'm trying to think down the road at every penny that we spend.
I mean, that's why we're here. On occasion, supervisors will supplant their judgment with the judgment of a department head. But the position does exist within the existing organizational structure, and as approved within the budget. As the budget officer agreeing with me, I just want to make that absolutely clear. But that's why we exist. Ms. Brammer. I'll defer to Mr. Diamond, Supervisor Diamond.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I concur with Mr. McGowan and the points that he raised on that particular position. I understand that it's in the organizational chart. We currently have authorized the hiring of a deputy or assistant city attorney to the current county city. So we have now. We also have, setting at the pleasure of the county administrator, part-time attorney. We have a specialized labor attorney. So I do have some concerns about, one, the salary of $49,000 being appropriated. 2, what legally can they do if they haven't passed the bar exam at that time it was brought up in the city? And 3, what I look at, or my previous experience dealing with interns, it was more of a work experience for them to build a resume, to get some experience in the municipality, not a question of whether we should be paying them, in that sense, is $49,000 to have someone that doesn't have has passed the bar, to need to be supervised quite regularly in regards to any work that's conducted. Will that individual be conducting work under the umbrella of the current attorney, probably? What liabilities the counties have? So my thought would be that we would just not approve that particular salary for that position, and maybe look at someone for the work experience and negotiate a much more reasonable salary on this. So I would have to personally vote against that particular process for the interim position for the
Any other discussion, Ms. Brammer?
Thanks. I have some points there. One is that we are changing the table of organization. We do not already have an attorney intern in the table. This is creating that position. you know, Ms. Cassine and Mr. Reichenbach have been handling the county attorney's office for several months now without anyone else other than the specialized labor attorney. Plus, we also have 2 DSS attorneys who historically were in the office, the county attorney's office. So we've got lots of attorneys, myself included, running around the county. No, I don't work for the county in that regard. But I also talked to the county attorney down in Montgomery County. It's a very similar size to us, and she has herself and one other very experienced person as her first assistant, and that's it. They don't have any other attorneys. And I want to echo what Supervisor Diamond just said about, you know, if we're having an intern there over the summer, why, you know, they're going to be getting a lot of experience out of us. They're totally green. Why are we paying that person an annual salary of $48,000 when we have similar? We're paying about that much for our assistant DA, assistant attorneys, and the public defender's office. Who those people have lots of experience. Also, we could be saving that $48,000 for the Office of Aging budget. We have people here that are still concerned about the Cedars site and what we are doing with that money. I just think we should be judicious about spending this money, and why are we doing it now when this person can't even start until August? Mary, the county attorney, has just got her first assistant started, and we still have Brian. So why are we doing this? I would say that we should amend this to either delete that entire position creation or at least drop that salary to 0.
Supervisor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I'm just looking at this again, you times that by 2, because it's a 6-month position, you know, that's $96,000 compared to our first assistant, we're just paying, you know, $73,500 to. You know, it's a lot of money, you know, for an intern that you know, doesn't even, it's not.
Supervisor Beatty.
I believe it's $48,000 annually, Brad,
Well, yeah, but if you times it by 2, that's 96 in there.
So annually means a full year, though.
Full year.
But this only goes, to 19.
Mr. McGowan.
All right, sorry.
Please speak through the chair. Mr. Beatty is correct in his.
Thank you. I'm also going to ask that that be pulled, the intern position, from this resolution. We amend the resolution. I'm not comfortable in growing government. This is an additional position to the organizational chart. We've never had an intern position, and that is an additional position to the organizational chart. We have plenty of attorneys around here. We have more specialized attorneys handling more stuff for this county than I can shake a stick at. So, with all due respect, this is a not needed $46,000, and here we are talking about trying to cut the Department of Aging and the senior $75,000, and they're the growing biggest piece of our county. And we have no problem trying to give them the jab, but here we are we want to add $48,000 for an intern, someone who's not even out of college yet, doesn't even have the bar, they don't even have their legal license yet. I mean, if I'm running this county, that doesn't even come up. That's not even an issue.
Yeah.
So I'd like to amend it, that we take that position off the resolution.
We have a proposal to amend the resolution by deleting the position.
That's correct.
Do we have a second to that proposal?
Yes, I second the amendment.
Ms. Bramer, discussion, Mr. Sokol?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My suggestion would have been to, seeing that we don't need this position, she's not coming in until August anyway, why don't we just bring it back to committee? I kind of agree with Supervisor Bramer in the fact that we do have Cedars representatives, and it was on the docket for discussion last month. Let's just bring it back to committee and vet it, and then it could be on for next month.
That's the path I would have gone, but we do now have on the floor an actual amendment to be voted upon. If we can close this, just so you know that if you vote in the affirmative on the motion, unless it's withdrawn, what will happen is the motion is to delete the position. I assume the funding as well. Is that part of the motion?
Yes.
Okay, it would be to delete the position and the funding going forward. If you vote the affirmative, that's what it does. If you vote the negative, it fails, and other options can be considered. Ms. Bremer.
Thanks. Even if we do what Supervisor Sokol is suggesting, wouldn't we need to amend the resolution to get that out for today?
Right, but you don't delete it. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I'm not
You guys are
suggesting.
voting to delete it. You seconded.
We would be looking.
This resolution, I'm sorry, Chairman.
It would be a different amendment to the resolution. It would be to take that and revert back to committee, to take that provision of the organization.
Why don't we suggest to Supervisor Beatty that he change his motion, and I would second that.
So
Change to the motion.
You're open.
Speak through the chair, please, Doug.
You're open, I'd be open to amending the amendment. So that it could be discussed at a later date, if that's what you're saying.
All right, what I would ask, Doug, it was just, are you prepared to withdraw your motion? And I'll come right back to you.
Yes. I'll
Ms.
withdraw.
Bramer, are you prepared to withdraw your second to that motion? Thank you. Mr.
And
Beatty.
now I'd like to amend it that we take it off today's resolution and just amend it so it's off today's resolution.
A motion to amend, Ms. Bramer, are you still on board with that?
Yeah.
Also seconded by Ms. Bramer. So you've heard the motion and the second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I'm almost afraid to ask. Discussion on it. Thank you for putting up with my voice, by the way.
Getting better.
Well, my constituents consider it divine intervention. Anyway, discussion on other resolutions. Ms. Bramer.
Okay, with regard to 128, I'm not sure, maybe Supervisor Simpson could just give me a quick, do we have a responsible proposer? Or are we, is this open? I don't know what's happening.
You know, perhaps, Mr. Supervisor Simpson, you could discuss the process quickly.
I see Mr. Hayjos is here. I'm going to let Mr. Hayjos handle this.
Without objection, Kevin, if you could come to the microphone.
We have received one proposal for the luxury camping at the Warren County Fairgrounds. We didn't put it on the agenda because we didn't have the proposals yet before committee. We are reviewing the proposal right now to see if he is a responsible proposer. And we were actually going to bring it back to committee on Tuesday.
We're going to pass it today though, and it's.
And Mary can probably jump in on this. We're passing just to award to the lowest responsive bidder. There's nothing more. It was a proposal. I think there may be some negotiating with this proposer. And that's what we're bringing back to committee on Tuesday.
We do this sometimes if there's time constraints, and this one, there's time constraints, so we rely on the department heads to read the proposal and choose the most responsible bidder. So there could be, to go through the process and wait another 30 days, wait another 30 days, the season will be in full swing. I think that's why we did it this way. Is that correct? And then you have only one proposal?
We only have one proposer, and the reason we did that is because there's an APA permit required as them to use the fairgrounds, and they're trying to get the APA permit process going.
Mr. Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, is there a difference between the most responsive proposal and the lowest cost proposal?
You're asking me, there are different provisions within the bidding law in terms of lowest responsible bidder, and then but there are other provisions within bidding law that apply to things like piggybacking and also best value. So the different ways of bidding things is.
So if we only receive one bid, we would have to accept it? No. Okay.
No.
It's not responsible for our RFP.
No.
Okay.
And in this case, it wouldn't.
I mean, if you write something that is totally.
Sure.
Doesn't
Okay.
match up with what we're looking for.
I just want clarification on it.
And in this case, it wouldn't be the lowest bid. We were out on the street looking for the highest bid, I suspect.
And this actually wasn't a bid, it was a proposal.
Okay.
Proposal, that's
Discussion on other resolutions. Mr. Beatty.
Just one final comment on resolution 146. I'd like to see us in the future actually do it in the correct order. Before we offer a position to somebody which has to be approved by this board, we actually approve it by the board first before we start negotiating salary and so forth and so on. To me, that is absolutely backwards, because heaven forbid this board turned down this particular individual, Mr. Moore. He's already given notice to his employer, and it creates quite the dilemma, and embarrassment for this board. So I'd like to see us in the future actually do this in the correct order. And when a position of director needs approval from the board, we do that first before we actually offer a negotiated salary. It seems like common sense to me, but sometimes it's not so common.
Any other discussion on resolutions, Ms. Bramer?
On 146, I do have concerns about some of the pressure that was brought to bear on the supervisors about this particular appointment. I do think that Mr. Moore has strong credentials, and I am basing my vote on the merits of his background and his out-of-area experience. I'm optimistic that he's going to bring that out-of-area experience and be really objective at how he looks at Warren County, and that he is going to hopefully raise the level of professionalism here. I want to thank Acting County Administrator Garrity for all of your hard work over the last however long it's been. And I do look forward to a full-time person being here to support our department heads and the work of our staff. They work very hard, and I think it's important that we have a full-time person here to make sure that nothing is slipping through the cracks and that they have everything, all the resources available to them. Thank you.
Very good. Discussion on any other resolutions? Vote on resolutions.
Resolution 101, making supplemental appropriation. Mrs. Frazier? Yes. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yeah.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity? Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 102, amending Warren County budget for 2018. Mrs. Frazier? Yes. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 129, amending table organization. And this is as amended to remove the county attorney intern position.
No. No, I believe it's, the motion is to send it back to committee.
Yes, and send that back to committee. But the resolution you are voting on is exclusive of the county attorney position that's listed on it right now.
Okay, right, all right, I'm with you now, okay.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yeah.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 130, amending Resolution 509 of 2017 to change the expiration date of the special counsel to the board position. I'm sorry. That wasn't called for. Yes, it was.
I believe it was, yes, 130 was.
Mrs. Frazier? Yes. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 133, authorizing payment to Lake Champlain and Lake George Regional Planning Board. Mrs. Frazier? Yes. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Mr. McGowan?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer? No. Mr. Driscoll?
No.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
That does pass by a vote of 559 in favor. Resolution 135, increasing capital project H322 Palisades Road over Brant Lake Inlet Bridge. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Yes. Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 136, authorizing appropriation of funds from the vehicle reserve to various departmental budgets. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 137, authorizing appropriation of funds from the county road surplus to county road project. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 140, establishing capital project H380, promoting first wilderness. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Yes. Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 141, decreasing capital project H340, First Wilderness 2012. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Yes. Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 144, enacting local law number 2 of 2018 regarding the imposition of additional mortgage reverting tax in Warren County. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
No, excuse me. No.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 145. Resolution 145, authorizing special counsel for the board position to work an additional 8 hours. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 146, appointing Ryan Moore as County Administrator. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 147, appointing Christian Hanchett as Commissioner of Warren County Department of Social Services. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes, I thought we were going to add the pending state, the state passing this individual.
It does say that.
That is a requirement.
That's a requirement of law.
That's a requirement of the law.
All you'd be doing is reciting the state law. We can turn to the resolution. Just a moment.
Yeah, resolution, so if we read the resolution, I think it's in there.
Would you read it to me, Craig?
No.
It does say at the end, subject to
Okay, thank you.
background checks and
Subject
to- yes.
confirmation by the New York State Office of Temporary Disability Assistance.
Perfect.
Supervisor McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
I'm a no as well. I think he'll do a good job. He just wasn't my top choice. Thank you.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Fowler?
Yes.
Resolution 148, appointing Janelle Jones as Director of Public Health Patient Services. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Yes. Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Absolutely.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
I'll second Mr. Sokol's, absolutely.
Chairman Fowler?
Yes.
Resolution 149, amending Resolution 10 of 2017, appointing member to Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board. Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
I'm abstaining.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Chairman Fowler?
Yes. Motion on the balance of the resolutions. What, wait a minute.
150 has been brought before there will be no roll call.
All righty. I have a motion on the collective. Ms. Bramer?
Wait, just quickly, are we, oh, yeah, I'll make that motion. Can I ask, do we have a confidentiality agreement regarding 150? Yes? Oh,
You still want to make that motion on the
I will,
collective?
on the balance.
On the balance, very good. Mr. Dickinson on the second. All those in favor of approving signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Just a quick question regarding confidentiality agreements. And at some point, maybe someone can think about this, but I think we're kind of getting the answer right now. But confidentiality agreements, when it comes to lawsuits and they involve public money, at some point, maybe we could get an opinion, a couple of sentences as it relates to the public's right to know what is in the terms and conditions of that settlement. Clearly understand when it's private dollars, but
I'm sure we can get that. We can answer it now.
The confidentiality agreement just states that you as public officials cannot comment on it. It's still subject to FOIL, so when we receive FOIL requests, it will get turned over. Before this vote, though, there are documents that exist in the FOIL agreement because the board hasn't signed them and the chairman hasn't signed them. So if we were to receive a FOIL request after this meeting, we would turn it over.
okay, good. Thank you. That needs to clarify.
Eric, can you explain the law for the public official if they breach the confidentiality agreements? We're subject to misdemeanors.
I can touch on that generally. I don't have the law right in front of me, but subject to the general municipal law, if a board member discloses something that they learned in their official capacity as a board member during executive session, or some knowledge you come into because you are a board member, that is actually a misdemeanor under the general municipal law.
Privilege of the floor. The privilege of the floor to anyone here wishing to address the board. Mr. White.
say is that Mr. Dickinson is absolutely right. The Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board has been around here for a very long time. It's brought lots of money to the area, provided benefits to his town and other towns. But you can also say the same about the Lake George Watershed Coalition. And we know that, and while we know nothing about any possible problems with the Regional Planning Board, we do now know that there were issues with the Watershed Coalition. And, you know, I'm just trying to find out what's going on there as well. But there is a big difference, and one of the big differences is this body did not have responsibilities directly over the Lake George Watershed Coalition. However, you do over the Regional Planning Board, and that's a huge difference. So when you continue to talk about, well, I'm just worried, it's only $7,000, that kind of thing, you're missing the big point, and hopefully that'll become clear to you at some point in time. But this also brings up the question of the voting and whether or not that was really even permitted. I noted that on the board right now, Ms. Fraser, Mr. Dickinson, and Mr. Strow are on the board. They all voted in the affirmative for this. Is that a question? Is that a problem? As far as I know, that's an ethics question, and there is an ethics board here, and that should be brought up to the ethics. And I think basically the part that it speaks to is that you're not allowed to vote on anything that directly affects you financially. And when you're a town supervisor and you're seeing this money come into your town, I believe that that would say that you have a direct interest. Certainly, we've seen people here abstain for less. We've seen Mr. Strow and others abstain from votes regarding SUNY Adirondack because he's on the board there. It's a good question, and I hope that it will be answered. And I will ask that this ethics question be addressed. I do not know whether it'll even be taken up, however, because while I have asked for ethics questions to be addressed in the past some years ago, there is an opinion that was put in by Mr. Reichenbach a few years ago after entertaining a request from June Maxim, who evidently they didn't particularly appreciate. And his opinion was that only another board member can question the ethics of a board member. I mean, to me, that seems, and it was only an opinion. I mean, opinion and $1.50 is still not going to get you coffee at most coffee houses around here. But that is something that needs to be addressed. I am asking now that the ethics committee address that, and if it's not proper for me to ask that, I want to be told that perhaps somebody else would take that up, somebody that is a supervisor. But it's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I don't claim to be a lawyer. So, but there are a lot of benefits that come directly from this organization, flows to the towns, a lot of it flows, they're the main sponsor, maybe the only sponsor of the AGFTC. There are other members here that are board members of the AGFTC as well. There's a $5.5 million grant that the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board has for the AGFTC. So, there's this whole circular, looking out for each other, and no one's really looking out at all, as it turns out. And it's a big question, and I'd like to get the answers to that. And we're looking forward to hearing more in the future. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Montesi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of order that you really should look into this, whether it's the ethics board or not. But I serve on and have served on the Soil and Water Committee. Frank Thomas serves, Craig serves, and that's a $350,000 budget that the county gives to soil and water. So we really should get this sorted out and say, you know, can a board member vote on the financials?
Right.
Thank you.
I think we will certainly look into that, but I think that, just as an aside, I think it's going to turn on the fact that they're not there, that they're representing this board. They're our appointment to that board to represent this board. They're not there like you privately joined some organization, and then that business comes before this board. They're there as our assigned, our appointed representatives. You find this also at the municipal level as well. I'm just putting that out there as I think that we're going to find that that's what the issue turns on. And if not, we'll find out something else. Ryan, anyone else wishing to address the board? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Virginia Winters from the Cedars, and I know that our little program is nothing compared to what you're talking about here, but we people at Cedars are not going to let go of this. And we do feel there's been one of your supervisors that's been coming to our dining room, upsetting the girls that are working there, putting them on a time clock, and we're wondering if he's got a right to do this.
Who's that supervisor?
I would say it's a stage. Do you know who the supervisor is?
Yes, I do.
I would ask
Mr. Lowe.
Mr. Lowe. I would say that we will we'll address that in an appropriate fashion if it needs to be addressed.
And also, I mean, he's spending time in the kitchen there, and there isn't supposed to be anybody in that kitchen without something covering their head. All the employees have to have hairnets. Anybody in there, it's a law that it's supposed to be. And I think this should be addressed also.
Thank you.
Has he been cooking?
No, I mean, no, the comment. No, the comment was made as it's a serious comment. We'll take it under consideration. We'll follow up. We will follow up. Any other discussion come before the board? Announcements, Mr. Dickinson.
Shamrock the Block this weekend in Lake George. The weather's supposed to be nice. Saturday and Sunday, come on up. Got all kinds of events going on.
Save everybody a beer.
Any other announcements?
All the green beer you can drink and throw.
Thank you. Not being from the community, but Lake George is playing this afternoon at 3 o'clock. I think
Absolutely.
Cambridge women are playing, or did play at 10 o'clock this morning. So good competitive basketball.
Absolutely, yeah. That's
Mr. Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, since our last meeting, I had a wonderful time with family up at the Lake George Winter Carnival this past weekend for the opening weekend of Thurman Maple Days. I've attended a couple of opportunities. The Chamber of Commerce's Lake Warren Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce's annual dinner up at Bolton Landing. I had the pleasure of being seated at a table with our Lake George Chamber director and a lot of other business people. That opportunity was to really talk about what is important here at the county with community and business leaders. I also attended the Open Doors annual dinner this past week and found out that's an issue very important to me. And then this past Wednesday, I went to the 30th annual Job Discovery Job Fair here at the college. And I spoke to a representative from Angiodynamics, certainly a large employer in the area. There was, in Wednesday's newspaper, there was an article about the increase in unemployment with manufacturing positions. He didn't understand that. They had a job fair the following day. They're looking to put a lot of people on. Possibly during the quarter that they took that survey, they may have been a little bit short-staffed. But I think the message is that we are finding jobs out there for people. Chris Hunsinger's people are doing good work, and I look forward to many more people working here in Boone County.
Good. Any other announcements, Mr. Garrity?
Yes, I would suggest, I'm surprised none of the Glens Falls supervisors brought this up, but next weekend is the Federation Tournament in Glens Falls. It's very important that the community show its support for that tournament. That's not the New York State Public High School, that's being played this weekend in Phoenix. But I do know that the committee, the basketball committee, will make a bid for the New York State Public High Schools to try to get it back. In the meantime, if you can make one of the sessions on the 23rd and 24th, it's both boys and girls, and if you can play on 25th Sunday too. It's important to the area, it's important to the city that we get those basketball tournaments back, and we continue to show our support for the city of Glens Falls. That's it.
Supervisor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, I really don't have an announcement, but I want to tag on to the opportunity to, while Mr. Beatty is supportive of Adirondack issues, there's another piece of legislation that's very important that we all need to be aware of and understand it. Empire Forest for the Future Initiative. It's a proposal to revise the 480A exemptions, which are given to landowners that have a certain number of acreage. They're coming up with a 480B plan, and nobody else will be able to get into the 480As. They'll go away over time. But what that will do, it's going to lower the exemption to 70%, and the state has agreed to pick up anything over a 1% tax shift. That 1% tax shift is unacceptable in this era with a 2% tax cap in the Adirondacks. So please support that too. We do support the forestry products industry. It's a great opportunity to protect our open space, proper forestry management practices, and protect our carbon filters. So we just need to come to realization that we can't deal with a 1% tax shift.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Dickinson, Mr. Frazier, all in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
The Saratoga City Council meeting is underwritten by the generous support of Pinnell's Restaurant, classic Italian-American food since 1922.
1922, Babe Ruth debuts with the Yankees. WGY signs on air. Exterminator wins the Saratoga Cup, and Pinnell's Restaurant opens its doors for the very first time. For 5 generations, Pinnell's has been preparing delicious Italian food, served in a comfortable, home-like setting where everyone is welcomed. 90 years of authentic Italian recipes, 90 years of the freshest ingredients, and 90 years of the finest classic Italian dishes, all made daily by hand. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga dining tradition since 1922.
This program is underwritten by the generous support of Stored Tech, technology solutions for computers, networks, and phone. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
Firms deal only with prevention, the systems that block hackers and viruses. Stored Tech knows the root cause is actually good people doing bad things. So we offer a security training program which includes certifying all participants to show they understand the basics.
Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phones. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.